right, I'm seeing top of the hour here, so we are going to go ahead and keep rolling with our long-term care event. Don't be scared of long-term care. And with this next one, we are going to be bringing back Carroll Golden, the Executive Director of the Centers of Excellence at NAIFA, with Don't Let Long-Term Care Bury Your Clients in Worry and Debt.
Thanks, Zach. You want to bring up the... Anyway, hi, everybody. I hope you thoroughly are enjoying today's program. I think it is an exceptional program. So thank you for staying with us. Zach, can you bring up the PowerPoint?
Just one moment here.
All righty. Okay, so the topic is don't let long-term care make your clients trudge through the idea of having no protection and no way of even understanding what's happening to their multi-generational family. I think for most of us, we understand that long-term care is a very difficult topic to introduce into a conversation. And yet we all know that it is very necessary and very needed. So, okay, Zach, what are we doing here? Okay.
Sorry, it looks like we're having trouble with the slides. Actually, they're not pulling up. They were pulling up fine the other one.
Okay, I'll give you a couple of seconds to work through that. I don't happen to have a handy copy, but I can tell you that let's just talk about in general, what is the current atmosphere that you're learning about today during our Don't Be Scared of Long-Term Care. I want to go back to the fact that Harlan mentioned that a better title might be Don't Be Scared of Long-Term Care Planning, because it's both. People are afraid to even use the expression long-term care, and they're certainly have no idea what planning looks like. So they're caught in this muddle of, well, if I don't talk about it, maybe it'll go away. But as a professional, you're seeing more and more that it's not going away. States are talking about it. New products are being created to deal with the fact that we need to talk about this. The hard part, though, the scary part, the part that's always murky and obscure, is how do you actually start the conversation? Well, in my opinion, starting the conversation really isn't enough. What you need to do is start the conversation and know where to go from there. Over the years of working with both carriers and agents and advisors and study groups, etc., I wound up getting advice from some very bright people who said, you know, the best thing is to have some kind of a way to approach the topic. How do you approach the people so that you can talk about it without talking about it? Bit of a challenge, I must say. So here's what I did. I started to really think about, if you're going to start this conversation, what would be 3 easy steps for you to use? And it doesn't matter which step you use in which order, as long as you really do use some sort of formula. So here's the formula. I'm so sorry that the slides aren't coming up, because it's hard to envision this without seeing it. Zach, should I take a moment and try to resend it to you or something?
Yeah, they're coming up as it's coming up as unopenable right now, and I'm not sure we had tested earlier. So if you want to set another version, maybe it'll be it's an access issue.
Oh, dear. Yeah, well, it's on my other computer, unfortunately, so, okay. You know what, I'll just have to send everybody the PowerPoint afterward, or if you give me a moment, I'll run and get the other computer.
In the meantime, I would love to hear from those who have been on all day. Just a couple of, just key things. What were some of your favorite takeaways from some of the other sessions? Just feel free to, unmute yourself. We've got a moment here, so we can take some time, and something that you're going to take back from you and back with your clients. I've seen a lot of activity in the chat, so just would love to hear some things.
Well, this is Moselle. I just think it's important that we're hearing different views from different industries, because we can
Absolutely.
sell our own industry as the mortgage side, but unless we understand the financial planning side or the insurance side, it's going to make it harder to actually present it correctly. So having all this information allows us to have a better conversation.
Completely. Yeah, and lots of book recommendations too. I know that we've been, hearing a lot of different recommendations on the books that we could read, and Kevin's sharing a link in the chat as well for some other NAIFA related things as well. So that's great. And we've got Carroll back.
Okay, and I have sent the PowerPoint to you, Zach.
All right, that's perfect.
In your email. Thank you for that remark about learning about other things, because as we get through the steps of how do you start this conversation, we'll see that I have listed at least 15 different ways for you to discuss this. So one, let's talk about a couple of steps that you can use. You can personalize these so that you can talk about, excuse me, long-term care without it being, let's talk long-term care. The first step is called the care guide. And what happens is I wrote this book, and it's a storybook. There's one that's for the insurance industry, because it's got like 93 footnotes and links, because you may want to dig deeper. The second book, How Not to Pull Your Family Apart, is coming out next month, and it is strictly the story. Why? Because this is a multi-generational issue. So one of the ways that you could build your business, obviously, is not to just have a client with whom you talk about one particular thing that you did with them. The way to really grow your business and to do your client the best possible situation in extended care is to have more than just that particular person involved. Because as we all know, think about your own situation. Do you think you're going to have, as you age and you need care, is it going to be in isolation? No, it's going to be either friends or family who are involved. So in the book, they start into the first step, which is creating a care guide. And there's a list of what can be put in the care guide. You can logically figure that out pretty much yourselves. And it's past history and future history. Well, Grandpa in this book, the main character is Jody, and she's taking care of her parents, and she's beginning to experience everything that you would expect. She's cutting back on work. She has to give up going to the gym. She's not eating right. All kinds of personal weighty problems. She's not discussing it with her children, but it's her children who start to notice that their mom is frazzled, doesn't have time really to spend with them or their children. It's the classic sandwich generation. She's talking with her husband, and she says, you know, my father is not going to want to do a care guide. He's private. He doesn't, when I brought it up to him, he kind of shamed me and said, you don't want to take care of me. So the way that they overcome it is to say, okay, let's have everyone in the family do a care guide. It isn't just you, Grandpa, But if we have family history, documents, Jody, the main character, says, you know, Dad, if something happens, I would like to know what to do. And of course, Grandpa says, well, I can handle it. And he goes, yeah, but what if it's you? I don't think Grandma can or would be able to handle it. Zach, are we there? Okay.
Never came through. I apologize.
Oh, for goodness sake, why is this happening? I wonder.
I'm not sure.
Well, we will have to distribute this. I did send it, and it did say that you got it. Oh. Okay. So the long and the short of the care guide is you make it so that it is acceptable to everyone in the family. You know what's upsetting? I spent some time making this Halloweenish. And so I really don't understand. Share and presentation. I'm trying it again, Zach. Anyone else I should copy?
Everybody.
Carol, you can try sending it to Kevin Velasquez as well, and I'll see if I get it.
Okay. Kevin.
She
And
might try and just share her screen and just pull the slides up on her computer.
oh. Yeah, if it was on my computer, I could do that. See, it's on my personal computer because
Oh.
I decided, of course, Gail, that I was going to make this Halloweeny and you know, put various things in it. It's so nice of this group to be patient with this happening. So we'll continue. Hopefully someone will get it at NAIFA and be able to put it up. So back to the care guide. If you make it so that the whole family is involved, because let's face it, how are you going to position this? I call it the I care step. What you're saying to your client is, I care. I don't need to know every bit of your health history, whether you have do not resuscitate, whether your will is up to date, but I need to know if there is something that's going to influence, especially negatively, what we do together. So Jody does get her dad to do it, and her son, who just had a baby, she gets him to do the care guide. So Grandpa starts to relax a little bit more, that this really is a family project. He gets the impression that he is not being handled, which is something that I think everybody resists if they can. Step 2 is called the care squad. Now, I'm sure that most of you have had enough experience to know when there's an emergency or there's long-term care, chaos ensues. Everybody doesn't know what to do, doesn't know how to effectively handle things. I remember having a client say to me, well, they all showed up and it took all the oxygen out of the room, and I actually felt more tension and worse because they started to bicker. That was my experience with my husband's family. It was chaotic. So step 2, the care squad, is really simple. There's a chart that you fill in. Who's going to do what? Well, what happens here is it's an inclusive way of saying, if there is something that happens, let's say that you don't live in the state. How does my sister participate? She doesn't even live here. Okay, so maybe she volunteers to do the billing. It's all electronic, and in reviewing the billing, she has a role. Somebody else maybe can handle the calling. You're the one running to the facility or whatever it's going to be for the care. So maybe somebody else starts the phone chain. The point is, you are now talking to a multi-generational family about extended and long-term care, but you're not talking about extended and long-term care. You're talking about a practical way to help them see that they need to start planning. They need to start moving. Here we have the Limited and Extended Care Planning Center with sponsors who can give you all the information that you need. We have the legislative working group so that you can stay abreast of what's happening in states and federal going forward, what products are being created. And you can't talk to your clients unless you get comfortable with some steps, some ways of approaching them. So all of what we learn, all of what we do has to be put into some practical way of actually not only starting the conversation, but the 3 steps were designed so that you could continue the conversation. So now they've created a care squad. And of course, what's your role? You've been a facilitator. You've been a moderator. But now comes step 3. And again, it doesn't matter what order you do them in. Step 3 is called the care planning team. And here again, you're going to say, we're just going to do an overview based on the age of the person in the book. We assign them different solutions. For example, term insurance with an endorsement. The son has 2 young children. He rides a motorcycle. His wife is concerned. He has DI to take care of continuing to pay the mortgage, but for medical expenses and bills, especially the ongoing ones, no. So this term insurance is affordable for him. And if something happens, he can use it for his long-term care expenses. So the care planning team is about products that you wouldn't normally be able to maybe talk with them about unless you had this opportunity. There was another slide in this presentation that apparently no one is able to open for whatever reason. It talked about the projected lifetime healthcare expenses. That's for a healthy 65-year-old retiring in 2022. It is a chart that you'll see when I send you all of this that shows that for the original Medicare Plus Medigap programs, the total savings that you'll need now is $177,000. And for Medicare, more like $100,000. That's now, today, as a 65-year-old. Do we think the costs are going to increase? Certainly. One of the things that I think is important for all of us to understand is that you need to approach this in a very practical way because nobody wants to talk about this. So if you're talking about the care squad, you are talking about it because somebody is going to say, well, okay, so the care squad takes care of the emergency and then what? And that's when you say, we're going to form a care planning team because each one of us needs to know a little bit. In the book, there's a paragraph or 2 on, 16 different ways to approach taking care of extended and long-term care. Are you supposed to be an expert at this? No, but that's what you have when it comes to finding out what will work for this client. So as they're looking at all these solutions, so are you. You're starting to have resources where you can go ahead and understand what would work. Now, suppose your client is interested in the fact that, well, which one of us doesn't want to age at home, right? Well, we all saw with COVID that there is a true shortage of homemakers and home health care aides. And another chart that I have in the PowerPoint will show you that in just 1 year, from 2020 to 2021, the cost of the homemaker went up 10% and the aid more than 12%. So the national average for homemaker services, that's not someone who does any kind of medical intervention for you, is just under $60,000 annually. Now that's going to take a big chunk of change. And then for the home health care aid, I'm looking at the chart. I'm cheating a little here. For them, it's 61,776. That's a lot of money. Even if you're not looking at a long-term illness, that's a lot of money to shell out even in 1 year, because there are clients who need to know that this could interfere with this generational family. If someone has to take time off from work, you know that about $7,000 of personal income is spent on an annual basis helping family members with caregiving. So have we got a reason to be talking to our clients about it? Certainly. The way, well, the care guide, obviously. And in the book, for example, the younger generation says, oh, well, we're not going to write the care guide out, are we? We're going to use some kind of technology, maybe a vault to put it in. Whereas Grandpa says, nope, I'm going to write it all out. So you have to recognize that when you're using these steps, you're going to have to personalize them for your client. But think of how much you're doing now with your client and with their family, however they define family. Pardon me. So the care planning team, you know, we did the care squad, which I call the what if stage. The care planning team is the discovery. This is where you're trying to see their reaction to various things so that you can discover what is going to work for them in terms of protecting them. Now, we all know that during this time that you have with them, you're always going to want to be the facilitator. Especially when you're talking to different generations, because the son wants to focus on something affordable for him, Grandpa's not insurable. So what are we going to do for Grandpa? Well, as it turns out, Grandpa owns his home. And when the reverse mortgage topic comes up, dead silence, because they're thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to lose Grandpa's home. Nothing could be further from the truth. Grandpa's a vet. I know nothing about that. So I went to LECP. I found Dan Magnus, who is an expert on it and wrote the book on Medicare. And I had him join the call with me. In the long run, we found the solutions for that generation. But of course, the caregiver, Jody, was getting more and more freedom. She was becoming more able to spend time on things like her husband and her other children, her health and her work. When you look at for the healthy client that you have, I have a list, and I'm just going to read it to you since you can't see it. You can talk about traditional long-term care. I know that they're going to say that's the one with the rate increase, but as we all know, that can be the right solution for certain people because they have got a lot more experience now in pricing it. Worksite and group. Well, why would we do that? Because there are some smaller business owners that you'll hear this afternoon in one of the later sessions that we're having. There is a carrier who will write with only 10 people, 10 employees. So maybe they want to write it off as a business expense. There is executive carve-outs. We have 2 or 3 different brokers that sponsor LECP that specialize in worksite. and can talk to you about whether this is the right solution for your client. Life insurance with riders, there are 3 different types. Be careful not to mix up when they exhaust the life insurance as opposed to when there is a separate pool just for long-term care. Annuities with riders. Remember, life insurance is for a death benefit. An annuity deals with income. And what are we hearing these days? People want guaranteed income. The whole instability of the stock market, etc., has shaken people a little bit. Well, these life insurance and annuities, these hybrid products, deal with 2 risks instead of 1. See which one is actually right for your client. We mentioned the term insurance with endorsement. Maybe they have enough life insurance so that they want to buy something dedicated just to long-term care, and they want something affordable, and they're young. Remember, term insurance, they have to have it when an incident happens. Have you thought about whole life? Maybe they have a whole life policy from days gone by. Maybe they are a candidate for a 1035 exchange. Or maybe they have universal life and they can borrow money out of it. You should never turn down information coming from them that might be helpful for you. I have a chart when you get this PowerPoint that puts you as a facilitator. The chart shows you the traditional long-term care, life insurance policy with a long-term care rider, and a linked benefit. It highlights certain aspects of those products, and it gives you the decision points for the client. This is all available to you. Again, as the facilitator, this is the discovery part where you're working with the client. Somebody is going to be working with him, and you need to get into the position of working with that person as well. The next one is, suppose your client has some issues, or they have budget concerns, or they simply hate insurance, or you've sold them insurance and you don't want to disturb it. Again, I'm going to read you the list. There is a single premium immediate annuity that could work. The vet's benefits. Be careful with Medicare. Be very careful to explain what's happening on the legislative front. As you know, Megan, Gail, and myself did a session on this at 11 o'clock, and the recording is available to you. Long-term care needs are beginning to even affect Medicare and Medicaid especially, and states can be very helpful because they are starting to talk about garnishing salaries. Your client may need another choice, may have another option, and if it qualifies, they can opt out of having their salary garnished. I've learned more about reverse mortgages, and I have to tell you, I'm sorry that I didn't know about this years ago. And life settlements, we have learned that what if you have a business client who is now selling their business? There's a lot of merger and acquisition going on. And as a result, maybe your client has $1 million buy-sell policy. What are his options? Maybe a life settlement would allow him to reposition some of that. We have a sponsor that does that, that can offer a program that allows them to maybe get a reduction in that product or a new product. This is something, again, think outside the 9 dots, because what you're trying to do is work with this generational family. Because when they start to trust that you really are trying to zone in on what will work for the immediate situation, that's an open door for you to start talking about, well, we've had this experience with your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, whomever it may be. how are we going to be better prepared so that the next generation? In the book, Jody, having dug herself out from the situation with her parents, immediately says to her husband, there's no way I'm going to do this to our children. And they restart this discovery and go through. Now, maybe for your client in the book, a friend of Jody's has a father-in-law who literally doesn't have what it's going to take care of his needs. He's not into long-term care. This isn't going to last for years, but he doesn't have the means. So they started to look at a short-term product. So there's always a solution. And I think it's up to you, being a person who deals with risks, deals with helping your clients. I think it behooves you to very much say, one of these steps, if not all of these steps, are a good way for me to approach the topic without sitting down and saying, how are we going to cover this expensive risk that you may or may not have? The fact is, most people will talk about wanting to have an organized response for the what if, for the care squad. Most of them are not opposed to saying, okay, where's the list that I need so I will know what I do have to put together and have it in a sealed envelope so that if I do need something, my wishes are in there. What I want is in there. You can see the entire focus of the 3 steps that I've gone over with you is to, 1, get the client what they need, and 2, to help you become part of the solution with the family, because this is not an individual issue. Caregiving and being a care recipient is a family issue. Again, no matter how they define families. And I hope very much that over this last half hour or so, I'm sorry that you weren't able to take a look at the PowerPoint. I apologize for that. But I'm hoping that you can see that having a formula, having a way to guide yourself through the topic without upsetting the client or making him feel somehow that he's being handled, instead of saying what options are going to work for you, and knowing that you have resources that will help you to talk about this, help him see the positive, help him see that some products are not ideal for them, but what is. And with that, I'm thinking that at this point, I can't tell if you've put anything in the chat. Maybe I can look to
Sure.
Zach to give
Yeah.
you help there.
Someone did ask if a copy of the care guide would be made available as well.
Yeah, well, the care guide is actually, I suppose at this point I have to plug my book, right? The first book is called How Not to Tear Your Family Apart. And it is a textbook. It's an industry book. You don't want to particularly share that with your client. It really gives you the resources of how to work through these 3 steps. The second book, which is How Not to Pull Your Family Apart, that one is for a consumer. It's so that they can see themselves in the book. Or you can use the book to say, tell me your story. How did you see this happening? Maybe it's a friend's story. What should you ask them if you're not using the book and you're just asking them about the actual story they know or you're telling them? What would you change in this story? What did you think worked out well? And what did you think needed to be changed so that it would have suited you better? Listen carefully, because they're telling you how they see this and how they think they're going to solve it. The reason in the consumer book, there are no references, there are no links. It's just a story with characters who tell other stories about people who are caught in different situations. Hopefully, your client sees themselves in a story, whether it's the book or one that you're sharing with them or them sharing with you.
And then the other one is, what's the timeline for the second book?
The second book is coming out hopefully next month during long-term care month, but you can't always control what happens in publishing. There are charts and graphs in the second one as well as in the first one, because I want you to be able to use some of that information in the book, or rather, usually if it's an interactive session, I read 4 different ways to approach it. And I ask you which way you do. For example, do you use numbers? Do you use a financial approach? Most people don't anymore. They say statistics don't work. Not sure I agree with that. Suppose you're talking to a CPA or an architect, you know, they're going to want facts. So while you can talk to them about a story, you may need some facts to really say, well, let's look at, for example, where are you planning to age? And then, of course, you have the facts of the horrendous increase, the lack of trained personnel, which we're all seeing in the news. You're just reminding them, you know, it isn't what it used to be. You may not be able to find somebody. As a matter of fact, Zach just had a personal situation, which he found a solution for, but it took some digging, it took some doing. And that's what you need to do. You need to work with your clients so that they get what they need when they need it, and certainly where they need it.
So just as a clarification, the care guide is in the second book. That's what Tim is asking in the chat.
Yeah, the care guide is actually in the second book. It's a chart that indicates not only what is in the care guide, but suggestions for the kind of financial documents that you could be asking about. You know, getting a relationship with an elder care attorney who draws these documents is also a way of expanding not only your knowledge base, but working with others. And it is a good way to service the client while the elder care attorney doesn't sell product. So it's another good way to expand your business and to really help not only yourself, your client, but you make a good new relationship.
Got an interesting one in the chat here. Can she share the list with us since the book is not out yet?
Yes, I can do that. I think I can get a copy of the graphic, and I will somehow attach it to this PowerPoint that doesn't seem to want to be seen by all. I'm very happy that you would find that helpful.
Absolutely. And then I'm curious about the clarification on this question. I'm not sure if it's asked for today or for just the Limited Extended Care Planning Center as a whole, but there is a question of, do we have a session on veteran benefits for long-term care?
We don't this session, but if that's something that membership and NAIFA has the ability to put that session on for you. You know, in the first book, and both are going to be available on Amazon, the first one is, Dan was nice enough to actually list the different links for different vets benefits. For example, does everybody qualify for the same benefits? We know the answer is no. How do you figure out different things for different benefits? All of the links are actually listed in that first book. Happy to ask Dan to do a session on vets benefits. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, I'm sure he would be happy to do that. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. Let's see here. Sending a survey. Well, it says which book has the benefits lead, but I think that you sort of answer that with the second one that we'll have.
Yeah, no, it's the first one.
First one has
The one for
links.
for us,
I see.
for the industry. Remember, the second one, you want the client to read or say, I think I want to talk about this with you. So the second one is for a consumer. The blue is for the consumer, the orangey yellow is for us. Is that easier?
Definitely. Well, any ideas about what the sort of, I mean, I know that you've got your book coming out next month, but any ideas about what some of these products are going to look like in the coming years, coming months?
That's a good question. And I think when I was doing the work on that third step, the discovery one, I had a lot of good information coming in from the field. And we know that, for example, the Washington Cares, they're talking about supplemental to their program. We know there's 5 carriers who are talking with them. We know that brought up the whole topic of product approval, which is always a challenge in, say, California and New York, etc. So we know that those states are starting to talk about, well, if we want product, we're going to have to work a little bit on product approval. I can't tell you exactly about the 2 new products, but one is with an A carrier. They are currently looking for state approvals, and it's a very different approach. It's an approach that I would say utilizes technology. It's a very today approach. It's not similar to what we're seeing. The other thing is, as more and more states and as more and more advisors start to bring the topic up, we see that there is more interest in healthcare companies looking at possibility of extending care beyond. So I think if you think about it, I think the products 10 years from now are going to look very different from the products of today. I do think that the traditional will continue. Hybrids certainly will become important. That's the growing market. But for new products, yes, I can tell you there's already 2 or 3 that are being developed and one that is looking for state approvals. Good question. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Carroll? You feel free to put them in the chat, or you can also unmute yourself and ask directly as well.
Okay, well, I think basically I would like to thank all of you for attending. I will be sure to get the list of attendees from Zach and have the PowerPoint sent out. I am easy to reach since I work with the centers at NAIFA, and would be glad to help you get introduced to any of our sponsors, because they're the ones that have all of these different products, to answer your questions or help you get educated in any way that would help you grow your business. So thank you.
Thank you, and absolutely tons of good resources, great resources on the center site as well that I posted in the chat. So now we are at the end of our about midway point for the long-term care event. So we are now going to take another short break here, let you all get some lunch if that's applicable, or some coffee to refresh, and we will be back at the top of the hour with our friends at Nationwide.